afternoon and welcome to False Allegation Radio. I'm here to introduce a new podcast to you guys and girls out there and sort of explain a little bit of what we do and where we want to go, the types of stories we want to cover, and just generally say hello and let you guys and girls know, because I appreciate that false allegations affect everybody. And I'll go into more details with what I mean. But just to let you know that you're not alone. I was, to give you my backstory, and the whole reason for this podcast isn't about me. It's about getting your stories out there, getting as much attention and as much interest as we possibly can between us to get this recognised by as many news outlets as possible, so that they know that there is a group of people out there that have had enough, that won't just carry on taking this abuse any longer. And let's be fair, it is abuse, isn't it? I was in an abusive relationship for many years, and it's taken me several years to realise just how abusive it was. We got together quite young. Within 6 months, she became pregnant, which was fine. It was... at the time, it was a bit of a shock because, like I say, we was very young and it wasn't really expected. But at the very same time, it wasn't unwanted, because the first 6 months of our relationship was wonderful. Unfortunately, it didn't stay like that. And very quickly, it didn't stay like that. So the first 6 months were amazing. But then she became pregnant. And as soon as she became pregnant, that's when everything changed. And I mean everything. It went from being friends, having fun, to being under her control, under her power. And it all became quite sinister, actually, to be fair. But like I say, you don't realise the time. What's actually going on. I was, and I do want to keep a little bit of anonymity here, so forgive me. And anybody who wants to be a guest, and I'm going to come to that in a second, but anybody who wants to be a guest, I respect your right to anonymity. So I'm not demanding that you come on, that you give me your name, the name of your partner, where you live. I don't want any of that. I want to hear your stories. I want every single podcast to have a special guest, and that special guest is you. And I want you to tell me your story. But at the same time, if you want to keep everything anonymous, as in your name, where you live, your partner's name, your kids' names, all that sort of stuff, again, that's absolutely fine, because it's not important. What is important is getting the story out there and telling the story for what it is. So within 6 months, she became pregnant. Everything then changed. Now, to give you a little bit of background about me, and like I say, I'm going to be a little bit cautious, so please forgive me, but there is good reason for this. I was middle to senior management within a local authority. And I held a very responsible position of power over numerous members of staff, shall we say. Sorry, forgive me a second. We don't get snow in the UK very often, and outside of the studio window, it's the amount of snow coming down is incredible. Now, I've got CCTV cameras set up in the studio to view the car, and I've just seen my wonderful wife go out and put loads of salt down around the car. Now that's wonderful. She didn't have to be asked. She's just on that, and that's amazing. And we should be thankful for little things in life, and I'm really thankful for that. So anyway, that's me getting all soppy now. The reason I've got CCTV cameras is because my former wife, should I say, her brother came to our house where before we moved, and actually said, look, I know where you live. We was outside, it was a sunny day. We was having a barbecue, the kids were there. He said, look, I know where you live, obviously, because I'm here outside your garden, and I'm going to burn your house down. Charming individual he is. Wonderful individual he is. So we moved to protect ourselves and the children because the police didn't take it seriously, which again is a shame. And I think, judging by the research that I've done, is going to be a common theme. Anyway, I'm rambling on, and this is what I do, so please do forgive me for this. So we married, and we lived together for many years, but it was all under the auspices of being controlled. I was earning, I was almost a high tax earner, shall we say. And somehow, despite the fact that I was responsible for a number of staff, I was almost a high tax payer. I'd been lured into this world where my mind said it was acceptable that my wife was saying to me, okay, you're earning all this money, but I need all of it off you every single month. So let's pay it into my bank account. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then when I wanted something, obviously the answer was no. So it took a few years, but after a few years of this, and after earning several 100,000, she agreed very generously that I would be allowed £10 a week. Now that would be to be spent on things like lunch at work and getting to work, and that was it. That was what my life consisted of for many, many years. So one day, almost 10 years ago now, I decided that enough was enough, and I decided to leave the marital home. I left with the shirt on my back, and we have children together, and obviously there was an ensuing custody battle for the children, which goes without saying, really. And it got to a stage where we'd been in court for a couple of years, and I was very slowly turning things around, and it looked like I was starting to get the upper hand. Now, my ex-wife used to physically abuse me on numerous occasions, as well as mentally and financially, and she controlled me. I didn't see any of my family for over 10 years. I didn't see any of my family for a decade. So I went to the police. I had a big, massive document, and inside that document was a couple of key lines. There was a text message exchange, and I think there was probably about 400 or 500 pages of text messages, and these were only from the past sort of 5 weeks. And in that 5 weeks, she'd sent, like I say, 500 pages of text messages. And obviously I'd replied to them because I knew that if I didn't reply, woe betide me, I would be in serious trouble when I got home. So one of the things that she put in there is that she admitted that she'd physically assaulted me, and that she apologised, and that she wanted me to come home that night, and that she'd never do it again, and that she's a changed person. So when I left, obviously I'd made several complaints to the police while I was with her, none of them taken seriously. And obviously once I left, I felt compelled to do it again and provide the police with these text messages. So the police pulled her in. Like I said, there was masses and masses of evidence, and the police officer who initially interviewed me said that normally in a circumstance like this, the first sort of offence would be just a caution. However, it's far more serious than that, and if it was if I'd have done this to her, I would absolutely be looking at a trial. So I took that as a positive that they was taking this seriously. About a month later, I got an email from the officer in charge telling me that she'd been given a caution, and that was the end of it. Devastating, absolutely devastating. But fast forward a couple of years, and I'm getting my life back on track. I'm in court for my children, and it looks like I'm going to get the upper hand and get access to some of the children that I've not seen for years, and potentially residency of other children who wish to live with me. And then the bomb came. The nuclear bomb came, didn't it? It had to come. For years, she'd insinuated that I was a paedophile. She'd insinuated that I'd assaulted one of my children. I had logs from the 999 call for every call she'd made about me in family court, and she'd made numerous 999 calls, all late at night, all clearly whilst inebriated. And I'm going to say that, and I can say that because at the end of the day, I'm not giving her name, I'm not giving the children's name, and I'm not giving my name. But she used to drink heavily, she had problems with depression, and she had problems with anger and violence. And in my mind, it was absolutely clear that when I read these transcripts of these 999 calls, that she was under the influence of alcohol. One of the transcripts were, "My husband is too close to one of his children. I think he might be something." And the 999 call handler obviously pushed her and said, "What do you mean? Are you making a specific allegation?" And every single time it would be, no, I'm not making an allegation. I'm just saying it's not right, is it? And she'd ring 999 for this. And nothing was done about it. Just let that sink in for a second. So here is a woman with a history of controlling behaviour that the police may have not acted on, but they had a massive file given to them by me. She has a history of domestic violence, and she's ringing up the police saying, "It's not right, is it?" And being given ample opportunity to say, "Are you making an allegation?" And every time she said no. So fast forward 2 years, maybe 3, possibly even 4, but a few years down the line, and I remarry. I'm about to get the ball, should I say, is about to swing my way in family court. I've just remarried. Things are going great. She's obviously in a desperate situation, and desperate situations call for desperate means, don't they? So what does she do? She goes to the police and says that I've raped her. Devastating. I was arrested the same week I remarried. Apparently the call was made to the police the day she found out that I was remarrying. That says everything, doesn't it? And that was said to the police. Now, on the day that I left her, I was held captive in the family home and she refused to allow me to leave the house. I was held captive against my will to the point where the police were phoned. And when the police arrived, again, she insinuated that I was a rapist. And when I first went in, forgive me, my voice is going, this is the first time I've told this story in many years. When I first went in after work, so what happened was I did a full day's work, and then I went home and I said, right, okay, I think we need to separate for a little bit. It's not working. Let's deal with it like adults. In front of the children, she said, "If you leave me, I'm going to tell the police you're a rapist." Now, she'd used this allegation numerous times in the past, but to do it in front of the children and then to lock me in was, quite frankly, scary. A couple of days earlier, she'd gone for me with a knife. She'd obviously physically assaulted me on numerous times, and now she's spewing this bile in front of the children. didn't know what she was capable of, I'll be honest. So it was a very worrying time. Luckily, the police arrived quite quickly. And when the police arrived, they pulled us into separate rooms. I was upstairs, locked in a bedroom. She was just downstairs, going on a merry way, just like you do with your husband held captive upstairs. Which, I mean, this is me just sort of bouncing things around in my head that I don't understand. Maybe somebody in the comments below can, help. But if I was a rapist and I was offering to leave, would you keep that person captive in your house, or would you open the door and say, "Get out, I don't ever want to see you again"? It made no sense to me. And I said that to the police. I said, if I was a rapist, why am I being held in the house with her? It makes no sense. So the next day, after I'd left, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, I got several text messages off her begging me to go back. Bearing in mind the day before, she called me a rapist to the police. So what happened, by the way, was that was dropped because she said, well, no, he's actually not a rapist. Like you do. So that was dropped. I was allowed to leave. I left with the clothes on my back and no more. And the next day, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I got several text messages off her begging me to go back, pleading with me to go back. Please come back, please. So I saw an opportunity to save myself from going to prison because there was no way I was going back. There was no way in a million years I would go back into a situation that I tried for years to get out of. To put myself in the lion's den of knives, of assaults, and of accusations like she made. I was completely innocent of any of these accusations. And she begged me to go back the next day. So I said to her, "Why did you tell the police that I was a rapist? Have I ever raped you?" And the reply was very simple. The reply came back, "No, never." So here I have a text message saying, "No, you're not a rapist. You've never raped me. You've never made me do things against my will." The day after, I was held captive and had to justify myself to the police when I was trying to leave. So I kept that text message and I went about rebuilding my life. Went to family court, changed jobs, moved house, and I just got on with life. And then, like I say, I was arrested, the same week that I remarried, which was over half a decade later, shall we say. I think it was about 7 years later. So 7 years after I'd left her, I'm then arrested for rape. And I won't go into details because it will identify me because the allegations are very specific. But what I will say is 6 months, so obviously I was interviewed by the police. I denied all allegations. I didn't go no comment. And then I pulled out the text messages and said, "There you go." And I thought that'd be the end of it and that she'd obviously be arrested for perverting the course of justice, or at the very, very least, wasting police time. And I was on bail for 6 months thinking, this is dragging on a little bit for something that should be quite simple, isn't it? And as I was moving house, and the reason I was moving house, as I touched on before, is because of the threats made by her brother, I got a phone call from the officer in charge, and I'm thinking, great, we've got a resolution, finally. As we move in house, I can rebuild my life. And it was 5 days before my birthday, and I was told that a further allegation has been made of rape again, and that I had to be re-interviewed under caution, re-arrested, re-interviewed under caution. So, obviously went down to the police station with the solicitor, and again, I didn't go no comment. Again, it would have been very easy to go no comment, because the allegation that she made this time was the first rape happened about 2 years prior to me leaving, and I'd refused to leave, apparently, for 2 years. But, so, right, okay, hang on a second, let me try and explain this a bit better. So, the first allegation was that I'd raped her. I'd refused to leave the house for 2 years, even though after that rape she told me to leave her. The second allegation was that I'd actually raped her 10 years earlier in a much more violent and repulsive way than the first one, but that was okay because that was just never talked about. So again, thinking about it, her first allegation is I've raped her in a way, or in a certain way, and that obviously she, that's it, I've been raped, never been raped again, rah, 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 get out, never come back, and I'd refused, apparently. However, some 10 years earlier, when she was raped in a much more violent and repulsive way, allegedly, it was just never talked about again. So again, obviously, I defended myself to the police and said, look, this is absolutely preposterous. I said, and the timing's interesting, isn't it? The fact that it's also my birthday, and the last interview, or the last arrest, was when I remarried. So that's somewhat interesting, isn't it? It took 12 months of being on bail before I was given the notice that no further action would be taken. Outside is a taxi driver trying to drive up a hill under full acceleration with about 2 inches of snow. I feel like going out and trying to help him learn how to drive. Dear me. So anyway, it took 12 months to clear my name. And I said to the officer in charge, I said, right, this is fantastic. This is great. Lovely. Thank you very much. I've proved that she's lied, because here's a text message admitting that she's lied. Her allegations make absolutely no sense. She's tied herself up in knots. How do we now move this case forward with perverting the course of justice? And the reply came back, we as a police force don't prosecute false accusers. So here's a green light to just go and false accuse, because we're not going to prosecute you, even though you've got a criminal record for this type of bit, or for controlling behaviour. You've got a history of false allegations. So there's 2 allegations which make absolutely no sense. She also made a false allegation against somebody in school, who I've since traced and established that it was a false allegation. And yet the police won't do anything. I've got reams and reams of evidence that what I went through was coercive and controlling behaviour. Now, at the time, all they would act upon is the assault that she admitted. So perhaps it's something that I need to look at with the police, and going back to the police and saying, okay, this is what you said at the time, but now coercive and controlling behaviour is a crime. Maybe we can look at that. But that's me. That's my story. Now, there is a little bit more to this story that involves my ex-wife, making further false allegations against other people close to me. But it's not fair that I disclose that, because it's not me. But it is what it is, isn't it? She also took several £1,000s off her parents to put in a trust fund for children and bought new cars. She, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm slinging mud. What I'm just trying to do is ultimately explain this is the person that I'm dealing with. And no one behaviour makes somebody a false accuser. It's a pattern of behaviour. Now, once the nuclear bomb of "he's a rapist" was dropped, Kafkas then stepped in and said, right, no contact with your children whatsoever because you might be a rapist. Even though it was acknowledged, yes, she was a domestic abuser. That was absolutely fine. But an unfounded allegation, which was eventually proven to be not true, was enough for me never to see my children again. Ever. I've had no contact with them. I haven't seen them. So what's this podcast about? So I've rambled for 20 minutes about me. Forgive me. But I think it's important that if I'm asking you to tell me your stories, it's only fair that I tell you my story. So what's this podcast going to be about then? Well, it's called False Allegation Radio. Primarily, it's going to be about false allegations, similar to what I've just told there. I want to hear your stories. But it could also be, and I've been contacted by several women who have had false allegations made by social services that they're unfit parents, or potentially people who have been falsely accused by social workers, by schools, hospitals. Unfortunately, this is so widespread now that it could come from anywhere. So that's one aspect and one angle. So another aspect, another angle that I want to look at with you all now is also parental alienation. Obviously, false allegations we've seen in my case, and I've seen in many other cases, false allegations and false allegations and parental alienations tend to go hand in hand. So it's something that I'd like to explore. So if you've got, for example, a story you want to tell about parental alienation, I'm here to listen to it. If you've got a story you want to tell about false allegations, I'm here to listen. But I'd also like to discuss the wider topic of alienation and allegations. So how widespread are false allegations? I've many a time chimed in on social media to get attacked by the feminists that how dare I say that there is such a thing as a false allegation? How dare I? What people fail to realise is I support somebody very close to me who was assaulted. I've also been assaulted. So please don't play that card on me that I can't say that some allegations are false because some are not. Because ultimately, I've seen both sides of both coins and both things happen. So how widespread are false allegations? How can they be ignored? Like I say, the force involved in my case stated that their policy was not to prosecute false accusers, even when they know it's a false allegation. How is that being allowed? And I guess the other point is, should all false accusers be prosecuted? I faced 8 years in prison for a crime that somebody admitted had never happened. That would have meant my children wouldn't have had a dad for 8 years of their lives. My wife wouldn't have had a husband for 8 years of her marriage. And and I'd have lost my civil liberties for 8 years and beyond once I'm released. Because the thing is, a very good friend of mine once said to me, you can murder somebody and you can come back from it. And I said to him, what do you mean? And he said, well, imagine if you're out one day in the pub and, you get into a bit of a silly fight and you push somebody and you meant to hit them because you was having a fight with them, but as they fell, they banged their head and died. You could potentially be done for murder because you meant to hit them. But moving forward, you could very easily come out of prison. Not very easily, forgive me. But moving forward, you could come out of prison. You could start up a little campaign, a little group, explain, what happened, how it happened, why it was wrong, and you could get redemption for that, to be fair. Not everybody would be happy with that, but it's possible it's happened. One of the people who was branded a hero because of the attack on Westminster Bridge was only there because he was on some sort of course that he was sent on via prison, and he was in prison because he was a murderer, and now he was regarded as a hero for stopping the terrorist. So that's what I mean. There is ways back. However, if you're seen as somebody who committed a sex crime, there is no such redemption. It's an attack on everything. It's a moral attack. It's a physical attack. It's there just isn't a way back in the way that there is a way back if somebody is done for murder, for example. Is that right? Is that wrong? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I want to start a debate, and I want to start an open and an honest debate where we can all sit here together. We can all have this debate. We may not necessarily agree, but there needs to be open dialogue, and this is why I'm starting this podcast. There needs to be open dialogue between people that have experienced this to say, hang on a minute, this is not right, and this is why it's not right, and then we can all sit down together and discuss it, because that's the way that things will change. I'm not a fan of our current government, and I don't necessarily think our current government's going to do diddly squat for us, but they're not going to be here forever. So if we can start this thing now, hopefully by the time the next general election comes along, we may get a different government. I'm not saying that, the Lib Dems or Labour or the Greens are perfect, but I don't trust a Tory to deal with social injustices and inadequacies, I'm afraid. It's just the way it is, isn't it? Call me wrong, colour me whatever, I don't care. That's just the way I feel. So, I've babbled on for far too long. So this is the introduction to False Allegation Radio. Do you want to be a part of this? I've reached out to a few people have reached out to me. I want to do one podcast a week, sometimes two if the need arises. Each podcast will have a guest telling their story, and we will discuss what their story is and what their point of view is, and I'd like to discuss it with the community around. So, this is a community that I never thought I'd become involved in, and in a way I'm glad I did, because I've actually met some amazing people through it. But I'd also like to say, and what sort of triggered me to actually get on with this, because I've been talking about doing this for a long time, what triggered me to actually get on with this was I was watching a programme on the BBC the other day, and it was like a documentary, a crime documentary, and I sat there watching it thinking, the old me would have just sat there and said, yeah, guilty, you're on TV, you're guilty, there you go, see you later, bye, you deserve to rot, rah, rah, rah. And I wouldn't have really, and forgive me, I'm not a bad person, but the way that this TV is put about makes you think in different ways. In my opinion, I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm not a bad person. I am a very empathetic person, but that's just the way these TV shows make you feel. And I sat there and I thought, do you know what? How many other people are out there that think, oh, well, if you've been accused of it, you must have done it. And I thought, you know what, quite a few. I've got a friend who was falsely accused by a shop owner of smashing up a shop. He never did it, but he spent months on bail, waiting to be cleared. So it's another false allegation. Now, if that was covered by these reality TV shows, how many people would have thought, oh God, he looks a bit dodgy? I'm not saying my mate does look a bit dodgy, but, you know, the potential is, it's just, we're living in weird, crazy times, and it takes somebody to stand up and say, do you know what? This is not right. This is not okay. So I want to hear from you, whether you're in the UK, America, Australia, Zimbabwe, I'm trying to think of far-flung places, Algeria, Canada, Ireland, France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, Turkey, Egypt. Basically, I don't care. The only limitation I have is I can only speak English. So I don't care where you're from, and I apologise now, but I only speak English. I do speak a little bit of Dutch, I do speak a little bit of French and a little bit of German, but it's a little bit of Italian as well. But I'm talking by a little bit, I mean a tiny little bit. So that's my only sort of limitation. I've just got a message that I have to go because one of my children's school is closing because of the 20 million foot drifts of snow that we've got. UK doesn't get snow, so when we get snow, it all kicks off. Right, thank you very much for your time. It's wonderful to be involved in a project like this. If you guys and girls want to be involved as well, that would be even more wonderful. Until next time, I'm going to run the pilot show hopefully this week with a friend of mine who I'm sure has lots to say for himself. But until then, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for listening. Together we can do this, okay? We just have to get it out there, and I believe between us that we can do. So allegations and alienation, I think, are the main two parts. If there's anything else that you do want to talk about from, you know, a similar perspective, my inboxes are always open. Just come along and talk to me. You'll find me more than amenable, and if I don't think it'll fit, I'll be completely honest with you from the get-go. But if I can help you, or if I can make it fit, I absolutely will. You've all been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Take care. Goodbye. Good afternoon and welcome to False Allegation Radio. I'm here to introduce a new podcast to you guys and girls out there and sort of explain a little bit of what we're doing, where we want to go, the types of stories we want to cover, and just generally say hello and let you guys and girls know, because I appreciate that false allegations affect everybody. And I'll go into more details with what I mean. But just to let you know that you're not alone. I was, to give you my backstory, and the whole reason for this podcast isn't about me. It's about getting your stories out there, getting as much attention and as much interest as we possibly can between us to get this recognised by as many news outlets as possible, so that they know that there is a group of people out there that have had enough, that won't just carry on taking this abuse any longer. And let's be fair, it is abuse, isn't it? I was in an abusive relationship for many, many years, and it's taken me several years to realise just how abusive it was. We got together quite young. Within 6 months, she became pregnant, which was fine. You know, it was at the time, it was a bit of a shock because, like I say, we was very young and it wasn't really expected. But at the very same time, it wasn't unwanted, because the first 6 months of our relationship was wonderful.